There's a couple of things that have come up repeatedly in the comments that I thought would be fun to address really quickly.
It's not my weight again, is it?
No.
Jesus, it's always about my weight.
No. On the clip I put up from our breakdown of Superman 2.
Yarb.
What's that?
I just said yarb for no
Yarb.
reason. I said
Okay.
Yarb.
There was a clip I put up where we were poking fun at the made-up powers and the fortress battle at the end, with including, of course, the famous cellophane S, as it's often referred to. A lot of the comments have nothing to do with that or any of his powers. It's something that he says. It's that one line of dialogue that actually is in the clip that I put up, where it's during the where he there's multiple copies of himself,
where he goes, "This is a game I played in school."
Exactly.
I used to play this game at school. Never was very good at it.
And we didn't really touch on. We mentioned it, but we didn't touch on what he meant by that, if anything. But a lot of people in the comments are asking, "What did he mean? That doesn't make any sense. He didn't have any powers, or he didn't grow up on Krypton, and what does that mean exactly?"
I honestly just thought it was tag. Like he's
tag. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I don't think he's talking about Kryptonian anything or powers anything. He's just like going, "This is a game I played in school. Just means I'm playing tag right now, but with superpowers. That's all it is."
That's a good one too. I was thinking hide and seek, since he was
hide and seek. Yeah, hide and seek, something like that. Yeah, that's so funny that threw people. But what's interesting is the fact that a lot of us, myself included, never thought there was anything weird about, the people thought the turning the earth around. It's the same thing where it's like, as a kid, I just immediately had my own answer for it. And that was, he's flying back in time, not if you turn the earth backwards, time goes backwards. Right. I never thought that. And another thing is, it just means that obviously these movies, especially a lot of us saw them as kids. There are people that are just like, "Oh, I'll go watch that," and I never did, that are experiencing it as adults. But regardless, it's like, the fact that anyone got hung up on that is hilarious to me, because even as a kid, I watched Superman 2 going like, yeah, tag or hide and seek.
I do remember kind of thinking, what is that? When I was a kid, I remember thinking, what did you mean by that?
It's also not very good dialogue anyway.
No, it's not. Yeah. It's a weird line.
There are plenty of those things where, like we discussed the alternate line instead of like, "General, you want to step outside?"
Yeah.
It's like the other one in the Donner cut about, you haven't heard of freedom of the press? They went with the right line, I gotta say.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of little things where you're like going, yeah, it's not the best dialogue.
Yeah. And actually, the thing with, I used to do this in school. I hadn't really thought about it until people started asking that question. And I was like, oh, well, he's probably just, my take on it is he's just goofing around. Like he's just,
it's a goof around.
He's just teasing Lois. Like, sort of say, don't worry, I got this under control. Sort of thing.
It's basically him kind of just showing off and going like, yeah,
because he already knows. Obviously, he has the plan that he's going to trick them with the with the reverse remove your powers thing, and obviously nobody knows that yet except him. So he's very confident, I think, throughout the whole battle.
It's part of it's a little, every now and then Superman is cocky and playful when he's like going, "I got this under control. Don't worry about it. It's bad." And Superman's like going, "You need to clear the air."
Right. Be afraid.
So that's interesting. Okay, so people had a problem with that. What else are people talking about?
Well, the other one I just want to touch on was the other clip I put up about whether or not Zod was killed, and all three of the villains, which we did talk about in the episode, but we didn't go into great detail about it.
And I was surprised at how many people always assumed that Superman had fully wasted those people.
And it really seems to be 50-50.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who agree with you, a lot of people who agree with me that, that's always what I thought.
Move along.
But there are people who are kind of not being dicks about it, but they're arguing with us, saying it's not, that scene isn't canon, it shouldn't count. And the thing is, I agree, that scene should not be canon. There's a lot of problems with that scene. It goes way beyond whether or not they survived, and a lot of people were pointing them out. The whole idea.
You mean the scene where they're hauled off at
the Arctic Police Force, whatever it is?
I don't count that one. I don't count that as canon.
But my point was that scene, as it is in the script too, because that pretty much is how the script was written, as Mankiewicz wrote it. That to me just shows that they didn't film a death scene. That was not a death scene they filmed. There was going to be a follow up, but they didn't actually get to finish filming it. Yeah. So that's all Lester had. And obviously that scene doesn't make sense anyway. The whole idea, as we talked about in that episode, the whole idea of an Arctic police force having access to the fortress is really immersion breaking and silly. You could make arguments for it that, you know, maybe Superman has a special agreement with the army in the area. You know, that's fine. But it's not that the problems don't end there. There's also the thing of the villains are walking out, you know, they don't have cuffs on or anything. They seem pretty relaxed, and they're just sauntering. Zod should be doubled over in pain still because his hand is crushed. You know, and also somebody very smartly pointed out that Luthor himself is standing out there in just a regular business suit and presumably sub-zero temperatures.
Yes,
not even shivering a little bit. And you know, they filmed it on a soundstage, and there, you know, they didn't have special effects to add cold, you know, breath back then. So that I forgive them for. But yeah, he should have at least been going, hey, what do you think, Superman? Hey, we can make a deal. But you know, so there's a lot of different problems with that scene. It should not be canon. Let's just make that clear. But my point again was their deaths were not scripted. They weren't filmed. But again, if you thought that they died, that's fine. There's really no canon reason to take it either way.
If you watch Superman 2, the theatrical cut, and have for years believed that Superman murdered 3 people and you're okay with it. I mean, if you walked out of it going like, oh, Superman 2 is great. Okay. I just always assumed, because we don't know the layout of the fortress other than the parts we've seen. They go down those chutes. What I'm surprised is that people think that in their minds it opened up to some sort of like death layer, and I'm like, no, I think they probably just got trapped in a thing, maybe cells. My brain, and that just says a lot about the era of Superman I grew up with, is, and I know that Superman has killed in the comics. He has. It's not something that he seeks. But the idea that my brain would not have even conceived that they were dead. It's like he defeated them, but I didn't see deaths. It's like they slide down a chute. And that doesn't necessarily mean to me, well, now they're literally just corpses.
Right. Because as many people did point out in the comments too, it's like they do it. The cue for them was like it's done so gleefully. It's like, yay, we won. You know, now they're dead. You know, this just didn't read it that way because Superman was not a homicidal person.
No, that's it. So my brain didn't go there. I think a lot of what we've talked about, of course, across all the films that we've covered of the Christopher Reeve era, is that we interpret them our own ways, and some things you go, oh, wow, I didn't even think that was a question. One thing that opening it up to the big community, which is, you know, the Saps, the people that are actually chiming in, I love it because I'm seeing that there's so many interpretations. And I always just think, is it people aren't on the same page with us? And again, when Superman 3, the one we did, when that gets posted and we start getting comments on that, I'll be very interested to see, because I'm sure there are people that will defend stuff that are going to be highly offended about my offense taken at the movie.
One of our members was going, who joined to watch it in advance, was like, oh, come on, Brendan, it's not that bad. Come on.
I really did have I did, of course, overplay, because I've always gone towards broadness with expressing because it's funny. But at the same time, I got to say, I really did have a hard time finding things to like in it. Yeah. And I was trying. But we did. Well, I did. And of course, the main thing is always going to be Christopher Reeve.
Yeah. But I'm in the process of editing it today. That's one of the reasons why I was late to the recording session.
How dare you?
We give it plenty of credit for all the things that did work and that were cool.
I mean, I've always tried to do that.
We do mention this it's more than I remembered us talking about, actually.
Yeah. Did the movie bug me? Yeah. Will I watch it again? Probably no, never. I own it. It's sitting there right there. But cool. I mean, that's the thing is, and I think, Chad, we said this last time, the fact that it opens up conversations, we're cool. We're very happy about that.
Absolutely. That's the whole point.
If you guys disagree with us, fine. Absolutely. I do prefer that you state a point rather than just going wrong. And it's like, well, okay. But at the same time, you know, we're all fans of I think we're all fans of the character, and that's why we care.
Exactly. And this
end of the day.
One more thing I wanted to say, because this does keep happening, and it is still a very small minority of commenters who say things like this. But it's just a movie crowd. People who come in and they don't understand what we're doing or why we care about these silly details. And it's so funny to me because it's like, guys, it's just, it's a movie. It's just entertainment. It's just, you're just supposed to enjoy it or whatever. It's, to me, I liken it to as if because I'm not into sports at all. Maybe, just a little bit. Maybe I sometimes enjoy it.
I got none of it.
This is like me going to a football game and running out in the middle of the field, in the middle of the game and going, guys, it's just a ball. Don't you see?
Because the thing is that there is the omniscient view, which I've brought this up before. The omniscient view where I sit there going that objectively, none of this matters. Personally, subjectively, it matters a lot. So, I mean, my mother, who only has herself to blame, she saw comics as encouraging Robin and I to read. And she didn't know that we would really latch on to comics. She read them to us, Robin being older.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But, it's like, because we would say, read this Green Lantern or whatever, and she would. She hates comics this day. Funny books. She calls them funny books. And the fact that I spent so much of my life and attention in that world, even wanting to be a comic book illustrator, then realizing I was a better writer than artist, but all that stuff, it all spurred from that. And she can just shake her head to this day. However, she still follows college football. I mean, and she knows that it's something I don't care at all about. Similar to what you're saying, it's like, we all have our things.
Yeah, exactly.
There are people out there that could and do look at YouTube. There's probably someone right now that has a 2-hour YouTube video that is about I'm learning scrimshaw, and someone's sitting there like carving or something, like going, you notice the designs here. This is very much a New England design. I'm like, I would not care about that for anything, and I could just go, dude, that's just a weird little hobby. Go carve some ivory or whatever the hell. I don't care.
Yeah, you're not going to go in there and say, guys, it's just wood.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not going to be the guy that does that. I will say, the people who are saying that, you're absolutely right. These are just dumb little stories about a fictional character. It matters to us.
Yeah.
So do I see it as just a filmic entertainment? Absolutely. Do I also nitpick the hell out of it and go scene by scene and go, oh, and some of this that we're going to talk about today does tie into that. He said, doing a good segue, because today we're going to talk about 2 amazing series that just came and went. And we finally are going to talk about them. And they're both doing their own takes on source material. And they're both different. And I sit there going like, as long as it's well done. But yeah, people are going to sit there and pick it apart. And people who know the characters outside of these things are going to go, well, that's an interesting idea for the Penguin, or whatever. Like, oh, that's kind of like Wiccan from the comics, and I'm like, yeah, I celebrate that some people could sit there and just watch a show and go, oh, that was good, and not give a flying where it all originated from. Right. And some of us are lifelong comics fans, and we sit there going like, wow, what a take.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, we appreciate your opinions and want to hear them. But yeah, people that come in and say this doesn't matter, yeah, we get that too.
It's just the thing I was going to say is like, yeah, there's people will say there's no comparison between football and nerding out about a film. And that's my point. It's like, you don't understand the game. Don't run out in the middle of the field and try to talk sense into the people playing the game. It's not, you just look silly.
Well, that's also, what I'm trying to say. The sports fans, that's why I keep saying is that everyone's got their thing.
Yeah.
There are people out there that have literally a catalog, an encyclopedia in their head of multiple years of a particular franchise, and they know every player and what their stats were and all that. And you could sit there going like, what do you get out of it? You're not on the field. You're living vicariously through these people. Are they avatars for you? Why do you get so worked up about it? Why do you feel that matters? They're games. They go out, they play a game. Some very talented athletes do a thing. Yep. And you're not doing it. You're watching it and then going, oh, yes, but last year that knee injury of his.
Yeah.
I care about that, but I'm not going to go on your YouTube video talking about like the Chargers' chances this year, and I'm not going to go, guys, it's just a freaking game, man.
Yeah, but that is a type of nerdery, and I think especially baseball nerds, they're often really into the math and stuff of the game, which I think
that's awesome.
Is very admirable. I think it's great. Baseball nerds are the coolest people.
Every single thing you could think about that is a pastime, and that or hobby, every single thing you could think about. That's why I was like scrimshaw or whatever the hell, collecting old oil cans. There are people that collect, ephemera, and they're totally into it, and they can recognize a maker's mark or what. And it's like that becomes a thing that matters to you, and that takes up a lot of your headspace when you're not just trying to put food on the table. And it's like, good on you, man.
Yeah.
It's like if you collect old Hot Wheels cars and you know every single difference in the Corvettes that they've put out and and the difference in paint jobs. I'm like, way to go.
Yeah.
Not my thing. Your thing. I'm going to talk about Superman with Chad. I'll be over here doing that. Wrong.
By the way, I haven't really mentioned it much. We have channel memberships on the channel, on the YouTube channel.
They get a preview.
Yeah, just like Patreon, they'll get the unedited, advance release of all the episodes as they come out.
Did they get to hear me say bad words?
They do. Yeah, it's uncensored. It's on the membership version because I don't monetize them. You can do that, or you can join Patreon, where we will actually get more money from your donation than you would on YouTube. But YouTube has the benefit of it's here, it's all part of the system, and whichever you choose. If either, we humbly thank you.
Oh, greatly appreciate it. But anyway, here's the exciting news.
All right.
I know that one of the series had a bigger impact. I think the Marvel series in general, not that they've just, even if it's really good, Agatha all along was fine, but I just think that they've become something we expect. I think the Penguin really blew people away.
Yeah.
Let's talk Agatha first and then get into the Penguin. Because I want to get Agatha into the conversation. So you saw the whole thing? You enjoy it?
Yeah. My mom and I were watching it together about halfway through after she got caught up on it.
The way it tied in, obviously, with WandaVision and, of course, the events of everything else, including Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and all that, just really solid. But what really impressed me is that just like with every Marvel project, they tweak things, they change continuity, they have taken concepts from the comics, made it its own deal. And me being Mr. Source Material, like, oh, they're messing with it. Marvel always impresses to where I sit there going like, I know why they made these changes. They're always smart changes, and they are creating a cinematic universe, which is not connected to the comics. It has its own continuity, but anytime they deep dive and work in little Easter eggs, I'm like, that just means they're paying attention.
Yeah.
And I think Gunn will be like that with DC, where it doesn't have to be a showy, like, did you guys get this? It's a reference to blah, blah, blah. So what impressed me with Agatha all along was continuation, but with its own feel. So it doesn't feel like WandaVision. It's its own separate story. It goes for broad comedy, dark themes, and it bounces between them very well. Kathryn Hahn is one of our greatest actresses of all time. And the sooner people just admit the woman can do anything and sells it so freaking well. I mean, there's the episode with her flashback, with her and her son Nicholas, and the deal she makes with death, Rio. It's just like, I was like, getting misty, and I'm like, yet just a couple episodes was a straight Tenacious D riff. I'm like, this is crazy show. And so bringing in Wiccan, making that make sense for people who don't know the comics whatsoever. And a lot of it is from the comic, but also they've changed it. Obviously, Agatha's changed a lot.
Yeah.
She originally showed up in comics in Marvel as like elderly witch lady who is literally the babysitter for Franklin Richards of the Fantastic Four. And she's not a bad guy. And here it's a similar thing where she's not evil. She's an anti. Well, I don't know if she's an anti-hero. She's self-absorbed. She's
pretty much a mass murderer, as we just learned in this.
Well, she may have absorbed a lot of witches' powers, and
that gets into maybe my only quibble with the storyline is that, but we'll get to that towards the end.
I just thought it was extremely well done, and I will also say, witchcraft-wise, they did their research there, so there's some actual historical or folkloric witch stuff worked into comic book mythology, and then musical theater. The fact that it's just sort of this grab bag of all these different influences, and of course the supporting cast, everyone just fucking amazing.
Oh yeah.
This is the first thing I've seen Joe Locke, is that his name, who plays Wiccan? Mm-hmm. Because I haven't watched the show that he's known for, which was very popular, but I don't know the name of it. And I haven't watched it. It's like a younger generation type show. I'm now an old man. I'm like, you kids with your euphorias and your things like that. I don't have time. I don't have the time. But he really impressed me, and he was great. And I cannot wait to see where it goes from here.
Yeah.
Because the next thing is going to be about finding his brother Tommy, who is Speed.
Yeah.
They're building those young Avengers, man. They're building the young Avengers.
I was so thrilled that they actually did that, because there was some debate over who he actually was.
That was the beginning of the series.
And I was thinking, well, surely it's got to be Wiccan, right? But a lot of people going, no, they're not going to do that on the show, whatever. And so when it finally, that episode where it's finally, he kind of drops his hand, where she reveals that she's known already that who he is at the end, and then his costume appears briefly at the end of that episode. It's like, yes. And of course, his big reveal at the end, the last episode, or I guess second to last episode, where he appears to save her from death, and just so well done.
And of course, again, great hero reveal when he shows up in full costume and he's just gliding out of the sky.
Yeah, that's
like,
what I meant.
That's so badass.
It is good.
I thought handling all that was good, and then I'm also sitting there realizing later, a lot of the characters in her coven, specifically the one that survived, she's from the comics. I mean, I was like, not a huge character.
Kale? Jennifer?
Yes,
Kale?
Jennifer Kale.
Kale, yeah.
I think is the character name in the comics.
Yes.
And maybe they kept it exactly that. I remember Kale as part of her name in there. But I was just like, obviously they, I think in the comics she is Caucasian. So it's like, that was sort of maybe, I didn't catch that because they've, gone a different way. But I was just sitting there going, that's nice. That's a reference to this. And of course, And once they start talking about the Scarlet Witch, just like you and a lot of people with all the speculation about who Billy is, there were a lot of people saying, they're trying to make you think he's Wiccan, but they're going to do a twist. Like, he's actually her son who, is the Nicholas Scratch.
Right.
It's like, okay, that's in there. And they're like, we're going to bring in Mephisto. We're going to have all they hint at all kinds of stuff, but I was sitting there going like, thank God it is just, you are the Scarlet Witch's son.
Yeah.
You are, in fact.
With the Mephisto thing, meme has become a meme thing, like Mephisto confirmed him ever since WandaVision. And in this, it actually would have, canonically in the comics, it would have made sense to bring him in because he has a lot to do with the origin of Wiccan and Speed.
Yes.
But this is what I was going to say. I forgot that the way that they explain his origin in this is still, it is bonkers, but it is not anywhere near as batshit as it is in the comics, which goes to what you're saying, is like they kind of made it a little smarter. And it makes sense within the context of the story they had already started to tell in WandaVision.
Essentially, the whole idea that the suns should never have existed. They were magicked into existence. The fact that Wanda's powers themselves can distort or change reality, all that makes sense. But they literally become her physical flesh and blood sons, thanks to demonic or, Mephistophelian, like a bargain. So they're like, you want your kids? Okay, fine. And now they're in the bodies of completely different people being raised by different people. It's like, oh, okay, it's just they're doing this combo, a smart, like you said, riff on how it worked in the comics. So yes, Billy Kaplan is actually, Billy Maximoff, and it's like, yeah, some of that's still in there. And they're like, I was surprised to see the showrunners say we actually thought about putting Hulkling in there, because Hulkling is the boyfriend, or I guess you can't really say boyfriend, because Hulkling is a Skrull, so they don't really have gender because they can shift a lot. But he's primarily shown as a masculine figure, and they are a couple, and it's all sweet. But they were like, yeah, we thought that would be just too much. I'm like, I can kind of see that.
Yeah.
All that, the journey, the twist they take on it, the way they flip a lot of the plot was so well done.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the way they make all of them sympathetic, even to some degree, Death, who Aubrey Plaza just bringing it from one end to the other.
Yeah.
Kind of always doing what Aubrey Plaza does. I will say this. Everyone loves her. She's been great since day one, but she kind of just play Aubrey Plaza all the time. That's not a bad thing. So Rio, who's not actually, I guess, Death, is she's the cycle of life kind of thing, because they make a big point about it's not just death. It's like this has to happen for life to go around.
Right.
Like, okay.
Well, they do refer to it as literally death in the show.
Yes, but she's also the Green Witch, and the whole thing is
less a Green Witch, more the Green Witch. I love that line.
Oh,
that's so
great.
Good.
That's Look at you doing your impressions. Yeah, no, she absolutely killed it. For a while she disappeared. Like for 2 episodes, they're talking about her and she's not there, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. But they were spending a lot of time with each of the witches' trials. And Patti LuPone, come on,
brilliant.
Come on,
that whole episode was spectacular.
The one I really did have the biggest problem with, only because it felt so light, and then of course ends in a character death. You're like, well, that's the thing about the woman whose mother was the rock star, and then they have to do like become a band and fight a demon. That's why I was like going, this is like a bad Tenacious D skit, right?
Yeah, or
Sing
like
louder and fight the demon.
And it had a little bit of a Sid Marty Krofft feel to it.
A little bit, Yeah. And I know that they were also purposely kind of like with WandaVision's, like the genre for this episode will be, because Patti LuPone's is very much like on like a fairy tale, and the tarot cards, all that tying in. But that character ends up being like, yeah, it's a little cheesy.
What was the name of the band on the Krofft Super Hour, or whatever it was, the Kong and
Captain Cool and the Kongs.
Kongs. Yeah, that's what it made me think of.
And here's something really scary. Captain Cool, played by Michael Lembeck, very well-known character actor. You could see him in all kinds of 70s TV shows and stuff, and ended up becoming a director, a very good director.
That's the thing about...
Way to go, Captain Cool.
Getting off topic here. This is getting back into old school PSAP stuff, but that's the cool thing. So many of those old Krofft and Filmation shows that we talked about, the live-action shows from the 70s. The remarkable thing about them is they had really talented people cast in those roles.
Sure.
Most of the time. Charles Nelson
Riley.
They
also did an entire show with the Bay City Rollers. So
anyway, moving on.
So really, I would just say that every episode was delightful. The starting it off, like I do love the whole thing where it was a Mayor of Easttown riff in the very first episode, and the fact that Rio, who we don't even know she is, shows up. She's like, "Really, this is the life you pictured for yourself since Wanda trapped you here."
Oh, and that was so brilliant, the way they tied that together.
Oh, yeah.
In the last episode where they reframed everything as it was really happening.
Yes, and as Billy is running through it, and he's like, oh, my God.
Somebody posted somewhere a scene-by-scene comparison of how we saw it in the first episode and how it played out in his perspective retelling.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool to see what they did. Because they could have inundated us with flashbacks in that episode to remind us of what had happened before, but they didn't. I thought that was
like,
really good.
Paid attention.
You can go back and watch that episode. It's still there.
It's so good. The craft that goes into even like a Marvel TV show, and I'm not saying that a Marvel TV show is lesser than their movies. It's just by and large, and some people dump on, Well, She-Hulk is the one that's gotten the biggest, I think, dumping on. And I really enjoyed She-Hulk. I had a little problems with it, but on the whole, I thought it was great. For one thing, Tatiana Maslany, she can't do any wrong in my eyes. She's
she was wonderful. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, yeah, I mean, the worst Marvel show is still better than almost anything. And again, I realize not everyone's on the superhero train, even after all these years of it being such a big deal. But I just think She-Hulk, there's proof that in a comic book world, Marvel or DC universe doesn't matter, you can do any kind of show. You can have sitcoms, and you can have weird horror shows, and you can have a straightforward like political thriller. People really slept on Falcon and Winter Soldier, and for the most part, I loved Falcon and Winter Soldier.
I wanted to say, I mentioned that the Patti LuPone episode where the character of Lilia, you find out what her deal is, and the fact that she's like,
and Billy, also speaking of which, she's bouncing through time, kind of, at least
like the character Billy Pilgrim and Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, which is my favorite novel of all time.
Great novel.
She is unstuck in time.
She's unstuck.
She's living her life in a nonlinear order, and they don't make it clear. And Slaughterhouse-Five, Billy Pilgrim actually, not only is he living his life out of order, but he relives moments almost eternally. He's lived his own death,
and he's
times.
Aware of it. That's always the trick, is that it's like, if it's someone, and they had presented throughout the previous episodes, whenever she has one of her precognitive kind of like spells or something and says something that's a total non sequitur, and they're like, and what's that mean? And then in her episode, it all makes sense.
It all comes together.
It's
so
like, wow,
brilliant.
that is some good, smart writing.
That was excellent. That was excellent.
I love that people remember, a Patti LuPone is out there. And granted, she'll never not be working, especially on stage, because she's such a Broadway goddess. But every now and then, it's just great that they're like going, let's put her back in a TV show and just give her a solid supporting character and then a standout showcase. It's like all of it. She's great all the way through. But when you get to her episode, you're like, oh, that's why she signed on.
Yeah.
She signed on because of that episode. It's so good. So I loved it. I have no idea what the future holds for her character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Billy is not necessarily trusting of her, but at least he knows why she's done a lot of the stuff that she's done, and now she's a helpful ghost.
Wasn't she? I think I saw somewhere that she, in some of the comic telling, she has been a ghost as well. So
if that's true, it's just from a run I haven't read.
Okay.
I have seen, and I love the fact that they even brought in the Salem 7. Not canonically, not very much like they are in the comics, but just the fact there was the Salem 7. I'm like, oh, yeah. And in the comics, they all have totem animals that they change into. So when it was like, oh, look, there's the coyote, and I was like, oh, it's cool. It's a Salem 7.
And the one, like I was saying earlier, the one little, and this really is this tiny nitpick. I don't really have a problem with this, but she is portrayed as sort of an anti-hero, but and they don't shy away from it really. They make it very clear that she's killed countless people for very selfish reasons, and that's just who she is. And she doesn't really have a redemptive moment, but there is that line towards the end where Billy says that you're not. I forget exactly what it was, but you're not a bad person, whatever. And she says, you're the only person who thinks so.
Yeah.
Because they're both complex characters. I mean, he was as he grapples with, in those last few episodes, he grapples with the fact that he was responsible for the death of several people. But as she points out, it's like, well, they were all pretty much dead anyway. You actually saved one of them because Jennifer Kale manages to get away.
But see, even that's it is something he will grapple with, but that was never any conscious thing. I just love when you finally find out that he, similar kind of to his mom, is crafting reality and doesn't even know it. The look when it's reversed, when the road appears for the first time and you're looking at Agatha, the look on her face, like,
she's like, what?
Oh shit.
Yeah.
That is a real thing. She immediately
realizes, oh, that's who he is.
That's what's so great about her character, is the fact that, she is the smartest witch in the room, but also it's just sort of like the way she rolls with something and is always turning something to her advantage. Again, she played it perfectly.
Yeah.
Because you can't, I'm going to say as a nice segue, similar to the Penguin, this is a villain, but you can't help but root for them.
Yes.
So it's like, wow, that's great. And she doesn't necessarily get off easy because, her mortal body is dead. She is a ghost now.
Yeah.
Who's going to be a guiding spirit for Wiccan. I love that. And again, if we get a follow-up series that's Finding Tommy, or if it just rolls kind of into Young Avengers or whatever, I'm totally down for it.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the lineup of characters they can now use for Young Avengers that they've been building, obviously Hawkeye, as in Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, Ms. Marvel, who actually at the end of the Hawkeye show shows up to recruit Kate Bishop. Or is it at the end of Ms. Marvel? Maybe or is it at the end of Marvels, the movie? Is it a button scene?
Oh, I don't know. Whatever.
But she shows up.
Tell us in the comments, folks.
Yeah. Well, the button scene somewhere, because it's a button scene where she shows up and she's like, "I'm putting a group together," and you can tell that Kamala Khan is just like, "Oh, I can't wait! I'm putting a group together." So Kate Bishop and you've got Stature, who's Ant-Man's daughter. And you've got the possibility of Patriot, who is Isaiah Bradley's grandson, and he'll probably show up in the Captain America movie. But Ms. Marvel and it's mostly lady friends, and I'm okay with that. And Wiccan, man, be awesome. Yeah. Anyway, totally excited for the future of that. People that sit there going like, why do you want to watch those things now they got rid of Captain America? He's not the real Captain America. Thor's gone and Iron Man's gone. I'm like, I'm excited for Ironheart.
Yeah.
Did you see that teaser trailer of all the stuff they got coming up?
I did, yeah. Including
and you see a little bit from Ironheart. I'm like, I thought that got scrapped, to tell you the truth. I heard they weren't going to go ahead with it. But
Ironheart's one of those things. I'll definitely watch it. I'm not as excited because I don't know the character. It was the same thing with Ms. Marvel. I was like, okay,
Ms. Marvel's one of the best. Highly recommended comics read. But they've done a fine job. Now let's go over to shakier territory. People that haven't done such a fine job, and that's DC. But they did an amazing job with the Penguin.
No kidding. Mr. Reeves was the person who set this one in motion.
Yeah, this isn't even our universe, or it's not the DC cinematic.
It's an
universe.
Elseworlds.
It's an Elseworlds.
I think they've officially labeled it as Elseworlds now. I think.
Yeah, I think so. And people that are like, "That was so good! I can't wait for season 2." I actually don't want a season 2.
I don't either. Yeah, it's like
I want them to. I mean,
story's done.
Reeves already said it's like, no, Penguin of course shows back up in the Batman Part 2. He's seeing it as one big story, which he's calling the Gotham crime story or whatever it is. And Sophia will show up in Batman Part 2 as well.
Yeah,
obviously
they set that
she
up.
Just found out that she's half sister of Catwoman.
Yeah,
awesome. So awesome.
Yeah, I kind of think that too. That they spent this entire season very cleverly and brilliantly building up your, nurturing or nursing your sympathy for this character. Like you shouldn't feel sympathetic for, but you do because he as the character himself is really good at portraying himself as empathetic when in fact he is not. And they keep throwing things at you to make you doubt that, because he really treats Vic very tenderly right up until the moment he kills him in the last episode.
Yeah,
spoilers.
Which I saw coming. But the whole thing is that he is still sympathetic. It's just that the lessons he has learned, and there is no doubt a sociopathic part of him, but I think he genuinely grieves the things he's done. At the same time, it's what's necessary. It's the way he stays strong. It's very much like The Sopranos, which, of course, this is very much a mob story like The Sopranos, where Tony Soprano is a monster. He does terrible things, and yet you're like, I just want Tony to be okay. It's like, I care for this monster. One of the beautiful things about a series like this is that it it isn't an origin story, really, but it's just breathing room. Like Bruce Wayne, the Batman is good. I really am not a fan of their take on Bruce Wayne in the Batman. I was like, that's not my version, but still, it's good. He doesn't get as much character building as a Penguin does, because Penguin gets 8 episodes where we really get to spend time with this person. And Batman's just going to be a guy who shows up in 2-hour movies. But how cool would it be if every one of the big villains, including Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, what if she got her own series that was just one season, a season Scarecrow, season of, well, obviously the Joker, but I have a feeling they're just saving Joker, obviously, for the movies. But yeah, I just thought, Colin Farrell, unbelievable. Kristen Milioti, who I've always liked. This is the best thing she's ever done.
That's similar to the Lily episode in Agatha, her episode in this show, where we concentrated on her and we get to see her whole backstory.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. Good. Great.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Jerry wrote me after that one, a little note. He goes, I don't think Arkham Asylum is a very nice place. And sometimes Jerry sums it up very well. No, and of course, Mark Strong, even though he's not a huge part in this show, but anytime he showed up, I was like, if you have to replace John Turturro, you could do a lot worse than getting Mark Strong in there, because his Carmine Falcone, I'm just like, that's great.
Is one of those all-purpose actors, man. You can fit him.
He can do anything. He can do anything. And now this is his third DC character.
Yeah, because he did.
He was Sinestro, and he was Dr. Savannah in Shazam.
Yes, that's I was trying to remember that name. Yeah,
which he was that was a weird and wrong take on Dr.
I totally
Savannah.
Forgot he was Sinestro. By the way, that's funny.
And he was perfect.
He was perfect
in a not great movie.
He looked perfect too. Yeah,
he looked perfect, and he played it absolutely the way he should. Yeah, very arrogant dickhead dude. And, loved it. And at the very end, that little button scene of him getting his yellow ring, I'm like, if only this movie had been good, we would have had a sequel with him as the Sinestro. Anyway.
And I have not seen Green Lantern since it came out in theaters, whenever that was.
I got the director's cut on Blu-ray right over there.
Oh, there's a director's cut. Ooh.
There's a director's cut, and it makes it slightly better. It's just like if you've ever seen the director's cut of Mark Steven Johnson's Daredevil, the Ben Affleck Daredevil. There's a director's cut that's a little bit better, but neither movie is good.
Yeah.
It's like, does the director's cut mean the critics are wrong? No, but there's a little bit more fleshing out.
Yeah.
Even in the theater, I kept thinking Green Lantern was real choppy. I was like, these things don't connect well, and it's because he was forced to trim it down. Watching the director's cut, it's still not a very good Green Lantern.
Yeah.
No offense, Mr. Reynolds, you did okay. You found another character that was a better fit.
I never thought it was as bad as people always classically say it is. But anyway, maybe that's another topic for another.
Yeah, another topic. Let's talk about Penguin, which was great.
Yeah.
The character's so far from the character from the comics. At the same time, it was smartly done. Just like with the Marvel stuff, if they make changes, and they still by the end are tipping their hat literally to the character from the comics. By the end, he's in a tux.
Yeah.
He has a top hat. He's not wearing it long, but the whole idea that in his mind, and of course the obsession with Top Hat, the movie, I was like, oh, that's great. The fact that to him, that was the nice epitome of class. And all through the show, everyone that goes to his apartment is comments on how tacky his taste is. The idea that this mook, because that's what he is in this universe, Oswald Cobb, not Cobblepot. I wasn't fond of that.
Yeah, yeah.
But the idea that Oswald Cobb has no taste, just like Elvis. If you suddenly get to the top, I love Elvis, but you get to the top, and if you haven't grown up in rarefied, atmosphere, you think, it'd be cool if I get 3 TVs in this room, get 3 TVs right next to each other, and then I want lightning bolts on the wall, lightning bolts. Because Oz is the same. He's like, oh, that means I've made it. Now I'm at top of the world. I've got a view of the city. I'm getting that for you, Ma. And she's vegetable. And he's in his tuxedo because that's what you do when you're on top. I was like, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Now where are the umbrellas?
But by the way, if you guys have never been to Graceland, it's wonderful. I do not fault Elvis for his wacky tastes, but he has a whole room. He has the jungle room, which is I think the den of the mansion, which is dressed up to look like a jungle. It's a big green plush carpet and fake trees and shit.
The shag green carpet goes up the wall and onto the ceiling.
Okay,
to make it look like a real jungle.
And then his media basement, whatever it was called, it looks like it's a straight rip from Clockwork Orange. It's all white with these weird futuristic chairs and things like that. That's where he has all the TVs. It's just really cool, but yeah, very tacky. But
that's the thing is that it's money does not, and success doesn't buy you any kind of taste. And if you are in his case, a truck driver from little Mississippi town, and you end up in Memphis and become a rock star, suddenly the money falls in your lap and you're like, can you make it look like what if I was a superhero, but a superhero that only like blue and yellow? Cacao.
Yeah.
TCB, taking care of business. And Oz is the same way. He literally came up from nothing, and he was the son of a numbers runner, apparently, like a low rung dude in the mob. And the mother fixation is kind of from the comics too, though. But it's just they did a smarter thing. In the comics, fat little Oswald actually is part of a rich family. That's the big difference.
Oh, okay.
But he is ostracized because he's a little fat kid. But there's also a version of the origin where they're not rich, but his mother owns a bird store, like a pet store. And that's where his obsession with birds comes from. And the umbrellas come from the fact that his mother always forced him to take an umbrella, even on sunny days, because you never know when it's going to rain. So the overbearing mother that's like, this is for your own protection. And then him being fat with the big nose and all that stuff and being forced to wear an umbrella, all the kids would make fun of him and call him Penguin. And some of the origins also have him waddling, though the idea that he has like this deformity in the TV show, you're like, oh, that's another smart take. He's always had that walk, which is where he gets the thing, not necessarily these little roly-poly dude.
And this was one thing I was surprised they didn't do, but it's probably a good thing they didn't do it in the series. That he's called Penguin several times throughout the course of the season.
But it's an insult that they've been.
But he didn't like it. Yeah. And I thought that maybe when he dons the tuxedo, something would happen where he would embrace that moniker and say,
and it's quite possible that he has, but they just didn't want to make it such an on the nose moment where he goes, no, don't call me Oz, call me Penguin. Right. You don't need that really, I guess.
Yeah.
I just, every time they would say the Riddler, I was like, no one ever in Gotham goes, when all the dams got blown up thanks to Edward Nash or whatever they call him. It's like, no, they're like going, since a Riddler blew, like, yeah, the Riddler.
I think it actually would be more effective if they put it into the movie, like the next movie. Like there's just one scene, like maybe just one, like maybe the last time you see him, he says, call me Penguin,
maybe
as a throwaway line, maybe.
Because Reeves is building his rogues gallery. They even had the Joker in that one little bit at the end in Arkham Asylum, which wasn't. I really like Barry Keogh. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
He's a really good actor, but all the close-ups or the stuff I've seen of what the Joker makeup looks like, I'm like,
it's a little too horrific looking.
Yeah, Matt Reeves is like, well, no, if he really got burned by acid, I'm like,
but
okay,
come on.
I don't necessarily want Cesar Romero with like white clown makeup on top of his mustache, but I think we can do a little better and get him closer to the comics. Actually, Jack Nicholson's origin in the first movie is the closest they ever got.
That's true. Yeah.
He actually gets shot and falls into acid. But anyway, yeah.
Well, speaking of origins, I do think it's interesting in this one that they do a little bit. It seems like they borrow a little bit of, they give a little bit of a nod to the Daredevil's origin for Kingpin, where we get to actually see him as a young man and what he was going through as a kid. However, you see in Daredevil, you see how he gets formed into a sociopathic person because of the shit his father put him through,
right?
And that he was driven to kill his father to save his mother. He's torn up. He's an absolute mess inside. However, Penguin in this show, he's pretty much sociopathic from the drop. And he just, as soon as he has an opportunity to get rid of his brothers, he takes it, not really knowing for sure if it's going to kill them.
That was a passive killing. In other words, he had no idea they would drown, but he was like, I don't really care if they do. He
certainly has no problem with the fact that that's what happened.
He just wants mom all to himself. They went hardcore Oedipal, and I was like, all right, that's a way to go with Oswald Cobblepot.
So the sense I got from it is that he wasn't so much forged a villain as he was that's just kind of who he is. That's his true nature in a way, that he is sociopathic opportunist who craves adulation.
The whole thing is that Sophia, for a lot of it, has a point all the way through. And Sophia also has been turned into a very complicated and evil person, but at the same time you see every step where she was turned into that, including her father foisting the guilt of those murders onto her, making her the hangman, and putting her away, locking her away, and she's out of power, and then she comes back, and the only way to get it is to basically kill off everybody. Wow.
And she is way more sympathetic as a person, because that's actually a different, more like the Kingpin and the Daredevil show, and that what happens to her is what turns her into a villain. Yes. However, and I was pointing out, when my mom and I were watching the show together, we were discussing it, and at some point in the middle of the season, I was like, this is going to be Sophia's downfall, that she's not as brutal. She's not as, because she actually does have the capacity for empathy, whereas Oz does not. If he sees a reason to kill somebody, he's going to take it. But for her, she saw his mom as a victim. She does torture her in that one scene, but she wasn't going to kill his mom.
Well, however, I'd say blowing up that thing because other people, innocent people, died.
That is true. Yeah, that's the most vicious thing she does. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that,
the thing is, she has
really just killing people who wronged her. Is what she's
every
doing,
time she says to Oz, it's like, or whenever she says to other people, it's like, it is weirdly still your fault, all of this. It's like, yeah, my father did that, but it was spurred on by the stuff that you said. And then it's like, yeah, she almost wants to feel sorry for Oz. And then she's like, that's kind of your thing, isn't it? It's like, it turns out that you're just using that to your advantage as well. Because he flip-flopped even in the show a million times. He's working with Sal Maroni in prison, trying to and he's always just trying to put himself on a better rung. So he's worked himself up from driver, and now he's the king of the city. And you're like, wow, okay.
And I noticed this from the very first episode, that how good he is at conveying empathy to the other characters and to the audience too. It's in his eyes. You see it. It's in Colin Farrell's eyes. That first conversation he has with, Maisel, Joel Maisel, that actor.
Oh, yeah.
That very first scene where he winds up killing him spontaneously. As they're having a conversation, it looks like there's love in his eyes, like going, yeah, I know, I'm with you, kid. Yep.
Right, until he disrespects him and calls him Penguin, and he just pops him.
And there were many other moments like that. He's just, as he's going, yeah.
One of my favorite moments in it, just because there were lots of very knowing, we've seen versions of a lot of this stuff in a million mob movies. This just happens to be set in Gotham, so it has a slightly fantastic sheen. But the whole thing where technically that last showdown he has with Maroni, when Maroni's out, and of course Clancy Brown, everyone in that show, by the way, everyone in Penguin's amazing. Yeah. And I love Clancy Brown, even though least likely Italian mobster in the history of the world. He's just Clancy Brown. You go, I accept it because you're awesome. But anyway, the fact that he only succeeds because the guy has a heart attack, essentially, and then dies in front of him.
And my favorite bit
is where he gets right in his face going no, don't go yet.
Yeah.
I want you to know I beat you. I beat you.
He's like, what the fuck? Damn it.
For him, it's like, that's more necessary. He's like, I know you're about to die, but I beat you. And then, of course, he goes out and takes credit, which, of course, is a perfect Oz thing. Going, Maroni's not going to be bothering us anymore. And it was like, damn, he killed Sal Maroni. Nope, Sal Maroni's heart killed Sal Maroni. It's just so well done. And then, of course, this is one of those shows, I guarantee you they thought of the last image before they started writing.
Yeah. Oh my God.
They have to sit there going like, finally, he is realized as Penguin. He is at the top of Gotham, but right over, boom, bat signal. I'm like, they have to have thought of that.
Yes.
Ugh.
And that was when that happened. It was like, of course,
Yes.
that's what it is. Because everybody was saying, like, after that episode before, when Sophia, blows up that neighborhood.
Yeah, he's like, Batman.
Well, now the Batman has to show up, right?
Yeah. I'm surprised he hasn't anyway, with, especially like when all the gang leaders show up to meet with Oz. I'm like going, you think that Batman doesn't know that every gang leader is going to a particular junkyard or something like that?
Right.
He would have been there in the shadow.
Yeah. So we see the beginnings of it, and finally, although that seems like it's a huge jump forward, though, right? That last scene where he's got the tuxedo, he's got a different apartment and everything.
I mean, yeah,
is it the same apartment? It's not the same apartment, is it?
No, it's a different one. Yeah, he's up on top.
So Gordon couldn't just then be contacting Batman about the explosion, right?
No,
that's got to just be an incidental thing that it just happened.
It's an incidental thing. I don't think that's literally, other than he feels he is on top of Gotham, and then of course there's a reminder. No, there's someone who's going to be taking you down because you're not. You're one of the bad guys there. And
it was a pretty, like you say, it was a pretty surprising move that they went for the very first episode. There's one mention of him on TV, I think, is there's a mention.
Yeah, I think it is literally them tying into the.
He's never mentioned again.
It's like, he's not.
They could have very easily thrown him in there, like, what do you think, the Batman's going to save you, or something?
Yeah, I kind of expected that people are going like, look, it's a different city out there. It's like some of my dudes got taken down last night trying to pass that drug off. It's like, the cops got him. No, it wasn't the cops.
No, the other guy.
You could have literally just done something like that.
Right.
They didn't. So Batman's been busy elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe he went out of town to chase down the hottie that split off from him at the end of the movie,
and maybe they'll drop an explanation about where he's been.
They might,
whatever.
And I'm sure there's a lot of other crime going on in Gotham, even during what was happening in the Penguin.
I suppose if they had done what you mentioned, like if they had dropped in and like, the other guy, he showed up and ruined this one deal we tried.
Yeah,
it probably would have been more. Maybe that would have been like too tantalizing. Like, oh, could you not?
Yeah,
maybe show.
But
something?
People know that they're not going to get Robert Pattinson in an episode of the show, even though Colin Farrell, of course, is the man who played him in the film, and he's a big time star.
Well, and Matt Reeves said in one of these little interviews they're doing that it wasn't, at least the way he tells it, it wasn't because of anything like that. It was just that narratively they decided it didn't make sense, that it was going to be something where he would overpower and overshadow everything else.
It's true. Batman shows up, it becomes a Batman story. Even if it's just one episode, but I wouldn't have complained. But still, the show is so goddamn good. It's so goddamn good that I kind of do hope that the current, James Gunn and company go, Matt, as long as you want to keep doing those,
please,
we're going to have our own Batman, but you keep doing yours because that stuff's good.
Keep it going, yeah.
And I think people can handle 2 simultaneous Batman projects. Mm-hmm. I think they won't go, but Robert Pattinson isn't. Who's this guy?
Well, especially as you pointed out a couple episodes ago, I think they're going to be so distinctly different from each other that's one of the reasons why it's going to work.
Well, Gunn is creating a comic book film universe unabashed, whereas Matt Reeves is still kind of doing no, this is the respectable adults version. Here you go. We're not going to have that kind of craziness. Don't expect to see Killer Moth in this, okay? We're not going to have that dude.
And like you were saying at the top of this discussion, I thought I had the same thought when it wrapped up. It was like, I don't think I want a season 2 of this because they've pretty much done what they set out to do. It's like, now we know who he is. What else?
And the story continues in the next movie.
And they can't trick us with trying to trick us into thinking he's empathetic, because he's not empathetic. I mean, I mean, he doesn't have empathy, is what I mean to say.
I think Colin Farrell loves playing the character, and I don't think, and I think Matt Reeves, after basically Max HBO went to him and said, "This was huge for us. How about a season 2?" And he's like, "Look, if I come up with a good story, yeah, maybe." But he's like, "You'll see the Penguin. He's going to be in the Batman part 2." what I would love is if they just keep making Batman movies, and in between we get us one season per character. I thought they were teasing us with the psychologist character at Arkham. I was like, why didn't they just make that Hugo Strange? It's like, because that's the natural fit for that character, is Arkham psychologist, helps Sophia, and he's brilliant at manipulating people's memories and getting in there and all that. I'm like, that would have been Hugo Strange, but no, they made up a whole another character. I'm like, that's unnecessary. Then did you see that someone zoomed in on a frame of the guy's office in one episode or something when they're in that psychologist's office, and they're like, seeing the background, that on his desk, Scarecrow mask, and right there, Scarecrow glove.
Oh.
And I'm like, maybe. It's kind of hard to make out, but even so, I'm like, well, then he should be Jonathan Crane, another psychologist character. Don't create a character and say he's going to be your Scarecrow, because
don't
then
do the
you're
sideways
doing
Robin thing like they did.
or don't do the. That's what they did with Joker. It's like, I mean, it's not the Joker you expect. It's a different Joker, but it's Joker. And you're like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Either, I mean, just, I know it would have been a big wink if they had said like, the one that's helped me out of the asylum, Dr. Crane, and everyone in the world's gonna go, oh, that's our Scarecrow. It's before he's Scarecrow, but that's him. He's gonna be. I wouldn't have minded that again.
So who do you think?
I like that actor though. He was good. Again, everyone in the show was great.
Who do you think? Speculative question. What are the villains? Since assuming they're going to stick to their grounded version of the Batman mythos. We've gotten Penguin. We've gotten Riddler. We've seen Joker in that that post-credit series. Was it a cutscene that he appeared in?
Yes.
So we know the Joker's there, sort of. Who else could they do that's not like?
Oh, a lot of them.
Not like Clayface or
no, like Clayface. Any of those. I mean, a lot of the classic Batman villains, and even some of the later ones, they're kind of like Dick Tracy villains. In other words, not too many of them are crazy fantastical. Even when I mentioned Killer Moth, he's still just a guy who wears a moth helmet. It doesn't have to be literally a moth guy. They wouldn't have Man-Bat or whatever, but Ra's al Ghul, which they did in Batman Begins, there is the Lazarus Pits, but maybe you just never mentioned that. It's like, they say he's immortal. They could literally just do a toss-off line. But Ra's al Ghul, certainly they could do. And yeah, Scarecrow they could do, Nolan did Scarecrow, because that's just fear gas. It's like, okay, whatever. I can't think of anyone that they really...
Well, Nolan also did Two-Face. And I think it would be cool if they just tried to find some Batman villains that haven't been done in a film. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say Black Mask, but Black Mask actually got used for Birds of Prey, even though that's a separate cinematic universe. That's the Snyder, over there. But Black Mask is another good like crime boss kind of figure, but he's got they always just, every single one of them has a hang up with some sort of thing. And in his case, it's all these different masks. Mad Hatter, you do the Mad Hatter. He's never been, other than the TV show, the 60s TV show. There's a million. Yeah. There's a million they could do.
Who do you think, people? Let us know.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
What do you guys think?
Should they do? I love it. I always think of the classic, like 4 or 5, and they've all been done. And I'm interested to see what Matt Reeves would do, because he's slightly more willing to be comic booky than Nolan was. Maybe his Scarecrow would actually dress as a scarecrow instead of just putting a burlap sack on his head. Who knows? I don't know, but he is doing his own thing. Yeah. I know that over in the Gunn verse, any of these characters that show up would probably be in a version of their costume. So I'm totally down for that.
And by the way, I was getting distracted earlier because I wanted to look up his name, the actor who played Vic Aguilar in the show, who, of course, his character dies at the end of the series. He's up. That means that actor's up for grabs in the DCU. He would have been anyways. This is a different universe. I think James Gunn needs to cast Renzi Feliz as the guy's name, because that guy is absolutely brilliant, tremendously talented actor.
He's absolutely great, and I've seen him in other stuff. I mean, yeah, he's definitely on his way up.
It would be great to see him playing a completely different role in the DCU.
Yeah, and actually,
who doesn't die?
I think again, Gunn will just hire whoever's right.
Yes,
I did watch that video that you sent me, that YouTube interview.
Oh yeah,
where he's kind of laying stuff down about how it all ties in, what's canonical, what's not, Creature Commandos and so forth. And he did, of course, they underscored the idea that he cast vocal actors for Creature Commandos who could actually play the same characters in live action for that reason. Because he's like going, I don't know, maybe David Harbour will be walking around as Frankenstein. I don't know. Yeah. But that was his idea. He's like, I cast people that I see as the characters, and I think that that's the way to do it. He did
drop a couple of tantalizing hints that he didn't want to get into, because he almost like, said I've gone too far. When he says along those lines, when he's talking about the voice actor is actually going to play the live action versions of them, he says, well, there's a couple exceptions. There actually are a few big name characters that appear in this show, and maybe I said too much, and but they're most likely not going to be played by those actors when they appear in the films.
He said side characters. I think you're conflating, because they did say there's some surprising big character cameos in Creature Commandos that aren't explained. They just walk through the world or whatever. But then he said there are, because they were talking about, will they play live action versions? He goes, there's some side characters in there that, if they ever show up in live action, they wouldn't be.
Well, the side characters in this story, I think that's how I thought he. But we'll see anyway. But he just saying there's not always going to be. That rule is not going to be hard, not going to be held to completely. But I could have sworn he said that there's going to be some big characters appearing as in a small part in this.
Yeah, he did. Series. But I don't know if those are the same as the ones he said that wouldn't be played by the same characters. Yeah, so I mean, it might be something like somewhere in Creature Commandos, Dr. Fate shows up, and you're like, wow, but Dr. Fate doesn't have a movie coming out. It's like
the other really fun thing he said in this, which was at the top of that discussion, where he says, well, almost everything in Peacemaker is canon except for the scene at the end. And he laughs about it. Obviously, it's the Justice League appearing at the end, which was something he was mandated to add to the.
And he series, said that it'll be explained and
it'll be explained.
You even need to explain it, but apparently he will.
So I'm really interested to see what that's going to be. There's so many different ways he could do that.
It'll just be like, hey, remember when you got hit on the head and you had that weird fantasy? Oh yeah, I remember that.
I mean, they literally could just reshoot it.
I can't wait for what Gunn's doing. I also encourage Matt Reeves to keep going, because if the quality remains as high as the Penguin, I will never complain about too much comic book material. I won't be the guy sitting there going, hey, as long as it's good, give me an entire channel that's nothing but superhero adaptations. Because like we were saying before, it can be something as gripping, and will probably be winning Emmys and stuff as the Penguin. That is seriously awesome. And all the critics fell over themselves. Kristen Milioti is going to get an Emmy. She has.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I think she will over Colin Farrell, even though Colin Farrell is amazing. I think that her part was the real breakout part of the Penguin. Whereas Colin Farrell is excellent all the way through. That'll probably be taken for granted. Like, yeah, that's Colin Farrell, and he just did a great job. But I think it's like Kristen Milioti, people are like going, holy shit. And I also love interviews with her, like where she's going, do you guys not understand? I've wanted to play a Batman villain since I was a little girl. Like, wow, she's a nerd.
Yeah.
And she's the one sitting there pulling out like Long Halloween. She's like, yeah, Sofia Gigante, this is where this comes from. And I'm like, oh man, love it. The difference is in Long Halloween, Sofia Gigante actually is physically huge. Like Gigante is the family name, but also she's this big whole, and they didn't go that way. It's okay. But yeah, so I'm totally down for whatever they do next, and I'm totally excited for everything. We're only what 3 weeks away from Creature Commandos?
Yeah. And I was going to suggest, we discussed this a while back, that if we can fit it into our schedules, maybe we could do like immediate live stream reactions to the episodes.
Yeah.
And see if we can get our get our Saps friends in on that?
I don't have any. This is my last show of the year. Tesla is this week, so like all of December, I got nothing to do.
It's your Christmas break. Nice. All right, cool.
Kids, stay in school. Don't do drugs.
Yeah.
But yes, watching Creature Commandos doing a live reaction or post show. I love it.
Because this is, after all, I mean, I know that we've joked about the fact that we're not particularly excited about this, but it is the dawn of the new DCU. This series is the beginning of that. I mean, technically, we've now learned that Peacemaker season 1 and the Suicide Squad were the real beginning of it, but we didn't know that until now, until literally yesterday, whenever that IGN interview came out. So, but it makes sense to me.
Kind of.
It never seemed like it fit in the other films in my mind anyway. That Gunn was just like, I'm not going to pay attention to anything that they've done in these films. I'm just going to I'm going to tell the stories the way I want to tell them.
Amen, sister.
And so now then DC or Warner Brothers caught up with him later on that notion.
So Saps, what were your thoughts on the Penguin and Agatha all along? More than likely you will be echoing us. So I'm just going to assume that you loved it as much as we did. But again, be grateful, nerds. I am, that we're in this era and have been for a few years with some bumps here and there of just really high quality, direct into the vein comic book adaptations. It's just been a dream kind of. And I'm so excited that people that care are in charge.
Yes.
You can pretty much always tell when it's a work for hire thing, like a Dick Lester. People who are just like, whatever, the kids will like this. Instead, you can tell when it's people who actually like, no, wouldn't it be great if blah, 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 because this came in from this issue of... Yes. So I can't wait. Creature Commandos is coming up next. At some point, I don't know when we're going to do it, but I got to do a Superman 4 and get that out of the way.
I've actually already rewatched it. I will again before our recording. Yeah.
Woo! So maybe next week, Superman 4.
Why not? Yeah.
So post Thanksgiving, as I'm digesting, I'll be watching Superman 4. Anyway, that's been this. He said, wrapping up.
This has been that. Yeah.
I'm so good. Segues. Also, last thing, kneel before Zod.
Kneel before Zod. Goddamn.
Kneel before that man.
Oh, he's got the Ultraman U. Did you notice that? It's the same.
Yeah, that thing right there.
It's the same U that Ultraman has in the new movie.
I don't know how
Spoilers
in there, but it's cool. Spoilers. All right, guys. We'll check with you later. Keep writing us. Again, Mr. Gunn, we're right here. Give us a ringle. Give us hello. I can try and make my hair look like yours. No, I can't.
You
really
can try.
That. Yeah. See, he always gets that middle like swoop up. I can't do.
Yeah. That's close.
All right. Anyway, love to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
I come in to do that dance that everyone likes me to do. Anyway, yeah, keep going.